Hello and welcome to the Business of the Business podcast. I'm your co-host, JP John Paz from the Two-Man Power Trip. Of course, joining me is the financial wrestling genius himself, Mr. Lavie Margolin. Lavie, how you doing today, sir?
Hey, John, I'm doing well. I had this idea, having watched the death of WCW, that I would wear a Goldberg t-shirt and everyone would see my support. And then I realized I'm looking at the screen here. No one can see it. So I don't know if there we go. Goldberg. Let's point it this way. A classic old school Goldberg t-shirt. Wanted to show my support. He's getting a lot of crap this week. Not absolving him of whatever happened with Bret Hart, but I do want to show my support.
Love it. Goldberg fan. Of course, I love it. I was just talking to Russo, and he said, I know Goldberg's trying to get me to say something bad about him, but I will not. So I thought that was good to take the high ground because obviously Goldberg did say he was going to bury him.
For all of Russo's sound bites, he doesn't come across bad in the show. He's sort of I had a contract, I wasn't going to agree. I didn't want to be part of a committee, whatever it may be. And his, all things considered, those first 3 months weren't that bad. And but what do they say? 1,000 cuts. But I
Yes.
do believe I do believe it was the finger poke that there was really no coming back. I mean, could have come back from it, but that was really set it downhill. I don't think people really remember the blood spot. That was already kind of when it was a disaster. But one of the things that I think Bischoff keeps talking about and no one ever sort of argues against it is when they asked for 2 more hours of television, right? For Thunder, look, how long has SmackDown been running? And it might have sped up, sort of fatigue with the Attitude Era, because you saw the same talents and sort of storylines over and over. But listen, it's been running for 25 years and it didn't sink the WWE. I think they could have done a much better job with Thunder. It was sort of they didn't care. I remember being excited about the first Thunder. The set was dark. It was cheesy. And, people could go back and look the results, and I'm sure it proved me wrong or whatever. But as I remember it, I think it was only Randy Savage, right? That was a star on the show. It was, you could see it was a step down, but not even an interesting one. WCW Saturday Night, it had its thing. But Thunder was sort of in between. It might have been live, but it wasn't this is the top thing. And it wasn't okay, we're going to make the best out of third tier. It existed neither here nor there.
And which also killed them, they weren't paying the production costs of the show. So that's probably why, okay, we'll just throw a set together. You guys aren't paying for it. So they got screwed, basically.
Yeah, that was, see, the executives confirm that, because and what people had said, which would be if Turner last year, with high ratings, it should have late 90s.
So let's kick off some news. Let's talk about the latest from Triller. What's going on with Triller?
Yeah, as I got an email from their PR department, they shared, sorry, this isn't good news this time. Just wanted to acknowledge the passing of Keith Evans, longtime Triller TV executive, who was very chief streaming operations officer, and we know how successful they've been, especially in pro wrestling and fight sports, what was previously known as the fight side of things. But when I went to learn more about him, first to acknowledge what a family man. I believe he had 7 children and 19 and 12 grandchildren. And he survived not only by his wife, but and his brothers, but also by his father, which is always sad for somebody to bury their child. But he really, like, when you think about like the MMA world, like he streams through like so much of it. Like from 1995, imagine that, to 2006, he was the director of information systems at UFC. Then there was apparently some controversy right when he went to the IFL, and that was a fascinating disaster in itself. The IFL, started by Gareb Shamus of Wizard Magazine, which I used to love, the comic book magazine, for 2 years. True Alliances and Entertainment and Tap Out Worldwide for a year. MMA World Series of Fighting, Chief Operations Officer. Go Fight Live, before coming to Fight and what's ultimately been Triller TV. So, I don't think the time is right to necessarily analyze the business impact that this will have. We want to acknowledge this person's life. But he's certainly involved in a number of things, and it will, have an impact when somebody has that much institutional knowledge. It's, it's hard to replace. And apparently this was an unexpected, tragedy, unexpected passing. So just sending good thoughts to the colleagues, friends, and of course, family of Keith.
Survey says, what's going on?
So
with
a wonderful gift from Gavin Bridge, the Fast Master, at iRule TV on X. So he surveyed 3,000 people, 18 to 64 in the US. It was mainly a survey focused on streaming, but about sports fandom as well. I'm not sure if that extensive survey has come out yet, or we got like but it's interesting. 17% of those surveyed said they're fans of the WWE. They have an affinity for it. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're big fans. So that number seemed high to me, because, going back 40 years, you'd have surveys of sports fans, and it would be like, well, in the territory days when they would do it, like really like the late 70s, early 80s, you would see in like the newspaper archives and so on, there the number would be higher of fans. But as soon as like the WWF had an impact, people were like somewhat embarrassed by it. So the numbers would be like single digits and low, as far as I remember. But so 17% of those surveyed said they're fans of the WWE. This breaks out to 20% of 18 to 34s, 17% of 35 to 49s, and 10% of 50 to 64s. I would actually have thought it'd be in reverse. Closest sports for fandom to WWE are NHL at 18%, men's college basketball, same, boxing, 16%. That's a little bit higher than I would have expected. UFC, 15%. I would have expected higher. NASCAR, 14%. I would have expected higher on that. I think PGA would be thereabouts too, but it got programmed wrong in survey, so PGA couldn't be measured. So, John, what percent do you think said that they're fans of AEW?
10% maybe?
So 4%.
Oh, ouch.
AEW is at 4% of 18 to 64 saying they're a fan, which makes sense for a challenger brand, according to Brandon. Gavin. I'm off my game here. Breaks out as 4% for 18 to 34s, 5% to 35 to 49s. And then interesting flop, 2% for 50 to 64s, right? They don't like the flippy flops. Maybe Jim Cornette fans. What would have been interesting, and I'll have to mention this to Gavin next time, is since it was focused on streaming, I'd be curious about affinity for TNA, just because they have such a big presence there. I wouldn't expect it to be more than 1 or 2%, if anything. But, that would be something I'd like to see next time.
Very, very interesting. Now, what is going on with a little bit of faction warfare? What the heck is going on with this?
So, we see these affiliations in pro wrestling from time to time, like obviously with New Japan, right when AEW started, right, they're like, we're loyal to Ring of Honor. So they didn't even want to consider AEW, and they'd only work with CMLL, right? Like you'd have these sort of things. So we're starting to see these things, especially on the WWE side, break out a little bit more as well. So of course, with AEW, they're pretty much set. Basically, worldwide, as far as I'm aware, the second, third, fourth, and maybe fifth, depending on how you measure things. Well, actually, probably AAA is ahead of some of that, but really some of the biggest brands. I wouldn't consider them outside of AEW challenger brands to WWE because they're really the biggest brands in their own market. So obviously you have the AEW, CMLL, New Japan Alliance, and Stardom comes with New Japan, and that's getting a bigger presence. Somebody that tweeted about this, they sort of broke AAA out on the other side, but that's not yet clear, right? Because AEW still works with AAA as far as I'm aware. Even on this Worlds Collide show, right? It's okay for AAA wrestlers to be on CMLL as long as they're not wrestling each other. So that's one side. The WWE side is where you're starting to see more action, and it's really based on, for the most part, sort of like corporate relationships. So WWE is working with Cyber Fight because one of the doors was open because they work with Abema that owns Cyber Fight. That like sort of like WWE distributes in Japan through there. Same with TNA in that TNA uses WWE's corporate parent as a streaming host. So, that door is open there. Marigold is an interesting one in that there's, this relationship being developed. We're starting to hear about AAA more. We know that, or it's been reported that WWE wants to work with someone in Mexico. AAA is obviously a natural partner, and maybe they'll do something with NXT. Seems to be going very nicely with TNA thus far, and WWC as a potential partner with WWE in Puerto Rico, and that's, as far as I'm aware, that's been on and off with the Colognes for years. I think IWA is still around, and they've had a relationship with them, but it's it's not what it once was. Neither is WWC, but sort of these relationships. Sometimes there's like more being made out of it than there is, meaning that. So if WWE gets paid to send the talents to NOAH, then that's revenue, or Marigold, or has some talent crossover. It's not like sometimes people think like WWE blessing a company will make them as big a company. But the way that I look back on it is, at the end of the day, was it like a big deal for WWE to work with USWA, Smoky Mountain, ECW? In some ways, like for USWA, I was actually reading the Observer yearbook from '93 because I like to read about sometimes bad news, but some really great gates early on, and then it petered out. But like just blessing a company by dealing with them, it's usually the bigger company that benefits more at WWE and AEW than just the exposure that others may get.
So what's going on with New Japan Pro Wrestling? What's the latest?
So firstly, New Japan continues to build its international distribution. Sometimes it doesn't mean that they've never been there before, but replacement or whatever it may be. So obviously we know that they're in the US on Access TV, which I'm curious to see if that'll be renewed. I was kind of surprised it was last time, just because they obviously already have TNA at their disposal, which, if they expanded an hour or they wanted to use classic content, I think that would do as well, if not better, than New Japan, but it gives them a different flavor to work with. They're on in India, I forget what it's called now, but the previously named Eurosport, which carries some of these different promotions, also AEW, I think, and here in the UK. So New Japan Pro Wrestling expands UK distribution via Extreme Channel on Freeview. The channel's launch coincides with a new major UK exclusive programming partnership with New Japan. They'll bring their biggest monthly events to the channel, featuring some of the most celebrated names in pro wrestling. This upcoming Dominion 2024 event takes place from its traditional home in the shadows of the famous Osaka Castle. 6 championships will be on the line, and it was broadcast on June 14th at 8 p.m. Now, looking at their events, so most purely as sort of like looking at New Japan, the US event would be the Capital Collision show on August 30th. Took a while for those tickets to come out. Not necessarily flying out of the gate, but really have to see by the end of things. But tickets distributed 861 in a 2,778 setup for that. July 13th is their Fantastic Mania show, which is of course, the team up with CMLL in a gym in San Jose. I think they had wanted to use their regular venue, but maybe didn't secure it early enough or were bumped, whatever happened, that there's a comedian using it now. But it's going to be in a school gym, but they're charging a lot for tickets. So about half the tickets still remain, maybe a little bit more than that. And then just to get a little bit of a temperature of the New Japan brand, there has been a pretty big pickup in the Forbidden Door show. June 30th, 8,392 tickets were distributed as of a week ago from WrestleTix, so obviously that would have increased. And now MJF is on the card. So I think that, depending on if they can exceed their setup, I think that they may exceed it. There's not a lot of time left, but MJF in Long Island again, if they can get the press that they need, he's not in the same position last time that he headlined a show that sold out, but that's just certainly helped with ticket sales. So what seemed not great at first in terms of testimonial to this continued Forbidden Door branding has certainly picked up, and I still see it as a positive.
Interesting. Excuse me. That Roosh versus MJF, which was rumored to be on the pay-per-view, was on Dynamite last week, commercial free, to kick off the show. The old rumor is from obviously Meltzer and Alvarez that Roosh was not allowed on the card by CMLL, so they had to do his match basically on Dynamite, and then they changed MJF's match on the pay-per-view Forbidden Door to be versus Hechicero, who's obviously CMLL star. So very interesting stuff over there by AEW. Now, as far as
it's hard to balance the it's hard to balance the politics as we were talking about before. When you have talent under contract, but they're still committed to others. So sort of why sometimes these factions don't always work out so well, but as long as you could find something that makes it work, then it's, the opportunity to keep going.
What is going on in the world of TNA, Anthem Sports, and everything in between?
So we've been doing for the last couple of weeks, like, where in the world is Richard Schaefer, right? Like, such a big name in combat sports. It seemed like he went poof from Anthem, and I didn't see any LinkedIn or any news announcements, and you would think something would be going on unless he was managing something of a personal nature, retiring or something like that. It would be like, okay, where is he? So suddenly he appeared back, basically the type of place he should, not necessarily where he should have always been, but probably the most comfortable fit for him is to run a big time boxing, I don't know if you call it promotion or promotional company, representative company or whatever. But as we move forward, we are excited to announce that Mayweather Promotions will be joining forces with Richard Schaefer, a highly sought after finance expert and a phenomenal founder in the world of promotional boxing with over 40 years experience combined. Together, we will expand our presence by establishing Mayweather headquarters in LA. Our goal is to elevate Mayweather Promotions to global success, supporting fighters worldwide and assisting them in making rewarding business decisions that will benefit them well beyond their careers. We look forward to this new chapter and the continued global success of Mayweather Promotions. Actually, speaking about boxing, not to get too far off topic, have you heard, John, about Saudi Arabia's rumored latest efforts in the world of boxing?
No, I haven't.
So basically, what they are hoping to do is to create, and I know, like, this has been tried before, but they have a lot of money to create like basically one boxing super promotion, so that they would buy out contracts and they'd work with some of the biggest promoters to have 8 male fighters in each weight class, at least the 8 best or biggest, and they would, so that you could like constantly make super fights.
Wow, interesting. About time they did something like that. There's way too many boxing promotions out there, and they're too splintered.
Yeah, so it's like I would watch it more, right? Like if you knew like,
Yeah,
okay, this is the best and fighting the best and so on. And with most places, and certainly boxing, people go to where the money is. So if they have the ability to sustain losses for a number of years, potentially, it could really be really be something. But going back to TNA and Anthem, so we were trying to read the tea leaves and figure out, like, okay, they're unwinding of executives, what's going on, and there weren't a lot of shows booked, but now that there are shows booked, and Jeff Hardy is signed, so whatever that would cost, and now they bring in an executive with WWE experience. Veteran sports sales executive Rob Klingman named Chief Revenue Officer. The former WWE executive will lead the development of partnerships and revenue growth for TNA. Anthem, a global multimedia company, announced that Rob Klingman has been named Chief Revenue Officer of Anthem, effective immediately. Klingman will report to Anthony Ciccione, president of Anthem Sports Group. So that's interesting in itself. It won't go through. He wants to report to Ariel Schnerer, who oversees TNA. He will report directly to Anthony Ciccione because Klingman's duties will be beyond TNA. With nearly 3 decades of experience working at the highest level of mainstream sports for some of the world's most recognizable brands, Klingman will be responsible for driving revenues across all aspects of the business, with an emphasis on sales and advertising, sponsorships, and strategic partnerships with Anthem's TNA, one of the world's top wrestling organizations, and Invicta. Rob has built a distinguished track record in the sports arena, guiding some of the biggest brands in the business to grow existing revenue and develop new revenue streams, said Ciccione. His duties as Anthem Sports Group's CRO will place special emphasis on TNA and Invicta, for which he is uniquely suited after spending 8 successful years with WWE. His professional wrestling prowess and sports industry relationships will prove vital as we continue to create and cultivate new areas of growth. Additionally, Klingman will lead revenue growth for TNA and Invicta's multiple revenue streams, including Fast, TNA Plus, pay-per-view, social media, merchandise, and more. He'll also work closely with the sales team of Access, where TNA's flagship show runs. He'll utilize his experience of sustained success for WWE, where he served as VP of Global Digital and Integrated Sponsorship Sales. During his tenure, he quickly established WWE as a premier sponsorship platform, securing first-time partnerships with major brands such as Geico, Coca-Cola, AT&T, Nestle, and Papa John's. The challenges, which we've talked about before, he has AT&T in his Rolodex, to use an outdated term. Hi, it's Rob, me. You're not with WWE anymore? Who are you working with? TNA. What? TNA, excuse me. So it's always a challenge, I would say, when you're seeking sponsorships and you still retain that name. Like we talked about, I don't think it's like as associative anymore, but it still obviously carries a stigma, and it's a little bit silly, but that's their burden to bear. So, okay, so Slammiversary. So, John, I have to admit to something. I made a mistake.
Whoa.
This might be the first time this ever happened, but something was shared on X without fully checking the facts.
Damn it.
So what happened was I got way too excited when I went to the Slammiversary sales page, the Eventbrite page, and I saw this massive expansion of reserve tickets. And not a single one of those tickets was for sale. So I counted the map and I said, I don't know, actually I covered myself a little bit when I wrote apparently, but I still admit to it. where not a single one of those 1,000 reserve tickets were on sale. And I tagged a lot of people, including you, John, and they shared out that it seemed like quietly those 1,000 tickets were gone. Lo and behold, and John, thank you for sharing the press release with me. Once they did announce that they were expanding their tickets of reserved seats, then the map came back up, and most of those expanded seats were on the map. So although they might sell out still, it wasn't at the time sold out. So I didn't make the mistake here on the podcast previously, but in the world of X. So we'll have to monitor how those ticket sales go. Gerard of bodyslam.net, who follows TNA very closely, had tweeted out independently confirming this report from PW Insider. TNA was absolutely thrilled with their Against All Odds pay-per-view last night. Jeff Hardy's return was excellent, and there was a lot of really damn good wrestling up and down the card. We are told that the Cicero Stadium in Chicago was so packed that the fire marshal actually told TNA they could not allow any walk-ups into the building. TNA fans like on X are like taking that and running with it as like a huge win, which they should. The show was sold out well in advance, but there was no way to accommodate them. And Gerard had said, I can independently confirm this because I was there and the show was great. TNA continuing to expand its street team, which is something that I would have loved to do as a teenager. So as we've talked about before, sometimes I find it like a little bit like, I don't know, a little bit of a gray area. You're like a big corporation and you're getting people to do sort of free work for you while giving them a little bit of incentives. But the street team will be out in full in Montreal, Cleveland, Philadelphia, Tampa, and Louisville. So just looking ahead at TNA's shows without necessarily a ticket map count this time. Of course, in Philly, 2300 Arena, June 28th and 29th, Slammiversary on July 20th, followed by a taping in Montreal on 8/2 and 8/3 in Tampa, on 8/30 and 8/31 in Louisville, on 9/13 and 14 in Cleveland, and then a show just announced in South Carolina towards the end of September. I'm not sure if there was a venue listed, but there's been references to a show there as well.
What is going on in the world of GCW? Game Changer.
So their show that took place on Saturday, June 15th or 16th. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out what the date was. The 15th at the UCC. So I was kind of following it where they'd be like 5 tickets left, 4 tickets left. And then I would go to their event page and I'd be like, aha, I see that there's 10 general admission tickets left. But those things blink on and off. But it was announced as another sold out show. And I, no reason not to believe that it was. So I believe it's 8 shows in a row in LA. Sometimes I think about, and Brett has talked about on this program, how good a venue it is for them, that it's a lucrative venue for them. So you don't necessarily want to change things when it's working, but I'm wondering, like, if they brought a big show to LA, how well, they would do. The show in Denver on June 14th, in terms of at least looking at the ticket sales map prior, it was just, I believe, 3 rows deep plus general admission, and there was just 1 ticket left in the second and third row. And then Phoenix was a small venue as well, and that was just standing room open, although they had announced that the show was packed. So that might have been packed out by the time that it occurred. Ticket sales picking up for their first show in Houston, which is Zilla's sort of return to the market. I believe that's his home base, but also training with Booker T's ROW and appearing with them a couple of times. So a smaller setup, but general admission available. Tickets picked up for that. In Dallas on the 29th, there was plenty of third row tickets left. Cleveland on August 2nd. Has most of the lower bowl gone, but plenty of tickets outside of that in a big venue. GCW is always running, which is good, but just to run through their schedule again. In Texas, Houston, and Dallas on the 28th and 29th. In Toronto and Montreal on the 5th and the 7th of July. I'm not sure if we'll see another backyard July 4th show announced at some point. Usually that's announced at the last minute because they don't sell tickets for that. July 18th and 19th in Louisville and Sauget, Illinois. On July 20th in Indianapolis. On July 28th in New York, Brooklyn, for the Barnett show. On August 2nd in Cleveland. August 4th, the House of Independence show. Now, interestingly, Triple Shot in Japan. So, first of all, teaming up with DDT in, I believe, Crockett Hall again on August 12th. Then they're running a venue. I don't have the name in front of me, but August 13th and 14th in Tokyo as well, which seats about 650. They've already announced back to LA on August 17th, No Signal in the Hills. I don't believe tickets have been on sale yet for Salt Lake City on August 18th. The Homecoming weekend in Atlantic City, August 24th and 25th to cap off the summer. Then into the fall, Detroit, Rochester, and Honolulu in November should be really interesting as well.
Man, just to throw this out there, because as we're recording, the rating just came out for AEW. Just want to bring this up. Oof. I don't know if you saw this or not, Lavie. Dynamite, June 19th, 502,000.16 in the 18 to 49 demo. The lowest rating for Dynamite ever. The lowest 18 for 49 for Dynamite ever. So not good there. Not good news for AEW.
Yeah, I'm processing it. I did not see that yet. Probably have an email from Brandon with the WrestleNomics breakdown, but 519. I'm wondering if that's. It sounds like something is off. I'm not making excuses for them or whatever, but right, like what were they doing the weeks before? Like
681.
Okay, so a little bit of a drop, and then previously the low there was like around 700s, and then 800s was like a good week, and so on. I think something weird happened, like before we got used to lower numbers. The Friday night rating of like in the 500s wasn't either. But yeah, especially when you're I think the main thing is to see, like, was this a trend? Will this be a trend, or was this like an aberration? Was there any? I don't think there was like anything major, like in terms of sports competition or anything that night, right? The NBA finals were over on Monday, and it should have been a quiet night. I guess right. There's always the excuse. It was hot. people didn't want to be indoors, but that one helped. But yeah, we'll have to see. Like as a broadcast journalist, I don't really like. Sometimes people say like you have to root for the companies. Like, not that I don't care, because I have friends at AEW, and people have jobs related to that. But I don't like, I don't root for anyone to have like a higher rating, or like root against someone to have a lower rating. It is what it is. But like you just have to see, like, is this a one-off, or like will this continue? Because did you watch the show? Was there something like especially unappealing about it?
No, nothing at all. MJF versus Roosh was good. The main event was Pac versus Claudio. I mean, pretty good. Maybe that's not a big enough draw, maybe for some people, but I don't know. I didn't mind the show. Mina Shirakawa and Tony Storm had a pretty good segment, so I didn't think it was that bad of a show.
Yeah, so maybe something was just off. I mean, I have some, like, not personally, but just like something about Pac doesn't appeal to me at all. I don't know why. It's just like, certain talents. You're just like, and then I'm like, oh, I love Sid Vicious, and people are like, what? Like, so everyone has their thing. But obviously, I don't think Pac is a rating seller. People used to blame MJF for like business not being great, like when he was champion, but I don't think he's going to sink the rating. Obviously, he has, I would assume, more appeal for people to tune in. So we'll have to wait and see. And the reaction on X and social media should be interesting as people go banana. What's his name at Forbes will probably be in the light. Alfred Kanoa.
Yes. What's going on in the world of MLW right now?
So not too much. I would say churning along. Blood and Thunder on July 12th. Looking at the patterns again, they've moved a few rows of seats likely, and then some haven't been put on sale, so we'll have to see as that expands. Summer of the Beasts back to their usual venue in Queens. Some tickets gone, some still available. Usually they end up selling it out. Center Stage is interesting because I believe last time that they had just a very limited number of reserved tickets and then the rest was GA. But now that they've sold out last time, they put a number. Basically, the whole venue has reserved tickets. I don't know if the prices are higher for comparison, but interesting to see how that turns out in September 14th. And then back to Cicero Stadium on November 9th. Still some, right? The last time it was announced that it was the fastest selling ticket. And then obviously they did really well. Still front row tickets, multiple front row tickets together still available. This was interesting and it's fine. It just seemed like a little bit low rent to me in terms of like a promotion that's national or wants a national profile and so on. Cidelina de la Renta had tweeted out that seeking local female wrestlers in Florida who are available on July 12th are open to work in the future. Must not be under exclusive contract with other companies. Message me directly or email me. So, like, I don't know. Well, maybe they're just enhancement talent and you have, like, people that are going to come into squash or whatever, but it just seemed like a little bit low rent to me. And then they've had this posting for a long time, but they were resharing it. So either it's newly open or newly funded to hire. They're seeking to hire MLW seeking to hire a graphic artist.
Interesting. Now, what is going on with Prestige Wrestling? What's the latest?
Yeah, so I've been talking about with Prestige and followed by Limitless in a moment. Like, they both have their ambitious shows upcoming. Prestige is much sooner on July 12th. So William Quintana, who I believe runs Prestige, had tweeted out a billboard that they have in town. Why not? Viking Pavilion Arena, Combat Clash, sort of get the word out in that way. Just looking at the map now, a fair amount of the better seats are gone and a fair amount of the less expensive seats are still there. So in a venue that could do a few thousand, maybe they'll end up with like a half house, which is, depending on their cost, not a bad place to be. But maybe they'll get some local publicity and so on as it gets closer to the event. So something to watch.
What about Limitless? You mentioned Limitless. What's going on with them?
Yeah, so Limitless Wrestling, theirs is not till late August, as we've talked about extensively. And in terms of like closer to ringside, around half of those tickets are gone. And then like some of the front of the next tier of seats are gone, but then the rest remain. As the owner of Limitless talked about, they're taking a risk on this show, their biggest risk. So something to still watch for both shows.
What is going on in the world of the NWA? Seems like they've got some shows coming up.
Yeah. As we were going to recording, I had seen a headline that Colby Carino had has been, not say rumored, but reported as having re-signed, I believe, by Fightful. So that's really a smart move for them. I think along with Morton, that those are like their key some of their key building blocks. But just to show sort of like their different promotions and what's going on. So on June 21st with FTW NWA Showdown in Lake City, Florida. On June 22nd, Exodus Pro. June 28th, Chicago. So when you have different promotions, right? June 28th, also NWA Crossfire Night of the Daredevils. So some towns going to one, some towns going to another. August 31st, NWA 76 in Philadelphia. On October 26th, Samhain in Sarasota. And on December 14th, as we've talked about a lot in Dothan, Looks That Kill.
Interesting stuff from the NWA. What about ACW, Appalachian Championship Wrestling? They got something interesting coming up.
Yeah, so this is just sort of like indicative of like grassroots looking for different ways to make money as a promotion. So they've grown their relationship with Buffalo Wild Wings. Appalachian Championship Wrestling will host a free show Thursday at Buffalo Wild Wings across from the Crossgates Mall. Fans are encouraged to bring their own chairs for the outdoor show. HW's annual Buffalo Wild Wings tour has become a hit for indie wrestling fans. This is our fourth season of doing them. Founder Chris Hughes said, "We do 2 shows at each Buffalo Wild Wings location between June and the 1st of August while school's out. We do 2 in Charleston, 2 in La Crosse Lanes, and 2 in Beckley." So I guess that's a total of 8 or 10, mixing up which city and so on. But obviously, whatever site fee that they're getting, it's a cost that you can control and keep things going as a promotion. And finally, just a little quick hit: Enjoy Promotions that tweet out their attendance. Enjoy Wrestling tweeted out, "Thank you to everyone who came out on Sunday and made our Stage AE debut a success. 694 people watched Enjoy Immaculate live, shattering our previous attendance record. New champions, incredible performances, and our most elaborate production ever."
Nice. I love that. Not good news, of course, on the AEW ratings, but hopefully back to normal next week, or at least somewhat back to normal like next week. Well, let's head towards the plugs. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. How about you, Lavie Marg?
Yeah, follow me on X, LAVIE-MARG. Check out my long form articles, LionCubJobSearch.com, and check out our LinkedIn group, The Business of the Business, Pro Wrestling Industry, including job openings.
Great stuff as always, Lavie. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. See you right back here next week for a little business of the business. We'll see you next week.